went from just traditional kind of conventional oil and gas development to these broad, sweeping, multi-state projects where, you couldn't take the old way of doing things and plug it into the new circumstances. And so we went through a lot of evolution, and we thought there was a great opportunity to do that in the renewables title space.
We just want to be that boutique service provider that designs and actions, your project from soup to nuts, how you need it.
Welcome to the Land Department Podcast, the state of land and energy as we see it.
Brent, we've got a lot of fun stuff to talk about today. A lot of new endeavors happening with Dudley.
Chasing the space, chasing the business. You got to evolve, yes.
Right? Absolutely. Getting more into the alternative space, renewables, solar, wind, battery energy storage. We've got Natalie Johns as our new director of alternative energy.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about Dudley Select Title, which is another thing that we're doing to get more ingrained into the space. So tell me how this came about and really kind of what you see as the path forward.
Yeah, I mean, the path forward, kind of stepping back to Natalie and the things we're doing, we've talked about it a lot. The land industry is finding a place in renewables, right? And land men and land women do land work. And so, that brings us into renewables. And I think on the button, 25% of our business last year was in the alternative space. And so, with that much attention and opportunity, we looked at, where are the weak points? How can we improve? What service can we provide? What additional services can we provide for our clients? And so, the first thing was we got to be able to manage it. So that's where Natalie comes in. She really shined, and we're excited to have given her that opportunity to join our team and at a different level of responsibility. She was a project manager for us, and now she's going to really steer a lot of what we do in the alternative space. She's going to be the face of the organization, really make sure that what we're learning in one location and office is being applied to another. I mean, that's the primary role for Natalie as the director of our alternatives group, is to ensure that the standards in office apply across the company, essentially. So I'm really excited about that. And as we thought about and talked through, the extension of our service, what else do our clients need from us? How else can we serve? Title insurance is a big part of it. We're largely an acquisition and title-based company. That's the services we provide. And one thing that's unique in the alternative space, and particularly some of the large utility scale projects that we see, the big solar fields, some of the battery storage sites, the wind projects, they all get a title policy. And that's something that's pretty unique to the space, to the energy space. We're all familiar with title policies in our homes. You get a refinance, you got to get a title policy. Buy a house, you got to have a title policy. Well, the same thing happens on energy projects. You're going to cover 500 acres with solar panels, you need an energy title policy. And with that comes some complexities, particularly in Texas. It's not as simple as getting a policy on a neighborhood lot. You're talking about condemning future development for the mineral estate, which is the dominant estate in Texas. You're talking about some of the incentives that are out there from the federal government, Inflation Reduction Act, all those things put emphasis on brownfield development, which for those who aren't familiar with it, brownfield means go where they're producing oil, right, and try to build a solar facility. So with that comes those complexities. And so we saw a real disconnect in the way that the workflow went. We saw a lot of delay, a lot of mistakes being made that could have been avoided because of the segmented kind of siloed nature of how title companies work and versus how developers need to develop their project, and frankly, just their know-how or understanding of what's out there, what problems could be out there. And so we set out to try to find a solution. With that, using our connections and the folks that we had conversations with, our friends at Select Title. They're a commercial independent title agent in the state of Texas. They do a lot of policies for big apartment developments, commercial scale, large developments. That was their focus. as it turns out, one of their primaries there was a landman that I worked with years and years ago, and we had good trusting rapport and relationship. So kind of that was the early stage of those discussions, and that's how Select Title was formed, or Dudley Select Title was formed. Really, we're just trying to create a more seamless process, a more efficient process for our clients, less segmented, more linear, more in line, more, forward thinking about, hey, we're going to need to consider these things for, our title insurance needs. Let's think about it now. What can we do now? And with that process being, fully within Dudley Land, the communication's better. We can think more proactively for our clients. And that's really how this concept was born. And we're really excited about it. And today in this podcast is going to be talking about, some of the differentiators between the agency model, which Dudley Select Title is, versus the direct model. We'll give a little definition of that. Spencer's going to join us kind of on part two. We're going to talk about the partnership and how it came to be and how we see it working and what our value proposition is. But really, this podcast is about the title insurance game and what we're trying to produce, the needs we're trying to meet, and maybe what differentiates us from the other options out there.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into it. Let's talk more about that direct model that's really currently out there. How does it work? And then really, what are the kind of challenges of not being integrated with an agency model when you're going direct?
Yeah. So, it's direct model. It's pretty plain and simple. You've got your major underwriters and out there that write these policies. Everybody in the game knows who they are. Direct means you're working directly with their energy group, right? All of these major underwriters have formed energy groups because there's a lot of need and business going to that space. So you'd be working directly with one of those people. The difference between the direct model and the agency model, which is what Dudley Select Title is we're an independent agent, meaning that you come to Dudley Select Title with your project, and our job is to get you to underwriting, to get you insurable, right? Or to advise you if you've got major hurdles ahead of you. The agency model allows us to select the underwriter who best fits your project's needs. I think if you've been in the game long enough on the developer side, you've had scenarios where you've gone months and months and months only to get to the end and realize that your chosen underwriter isn't going to underwrite. Your project's not insurable. Well, from our standpoint as an agent, we can be shopping and having these conversations with multiple underwriters concurrently, such that if you run into an issue with one, you have options, and we can help guide you to an underwriter who maybe is a little more tolerant of whatever your circumstances might be, maybe a little more informed, a little more or less risk averse, depending on what's going on, and help steer you to that process, to the right underwriter for the right project. At the same time, you have the benefit of that kind of boutique catered approach to navigating through that process. Dudley Select Title, folks on our underwriting side and our examination side are in the space. They know how to speak the language. They know how to communicate your circumstances to the underwriters, right? And so you get someone that's kind of working on your behalf in your best interest to negotiate and work through the hurdles with your underwriters, as opposed to 4, 5, or 6 different developers on your team trying to navigate those conversations and get up to speed on, industry speak, what they really need to see, so on and so forth. So that's the major difference. When you're working direct, you're working with one group, and you have to succumb to whatever their requests and requirements are. You work the agency model, you've got options. You can take your policy firsthand, send it to Stewart. All of those groups that we're endorsed by. So that's the primary differentiator between the two models.
And so when you're in that integrated state of the agency model, like Dudley Select Title, what are really the huge benefits that people are going to see like day in, day out that they're probably not even thinking about?
Yeah, it's what we were seeking to really address. So, you have the independent agency model, which Dudley Select is, but kind of the unique thing beyond being just an agent is that we've integrated Dudley Land Company. We've integrated the work that Dudley Land Company traditionally does for our renewables clients into the title insurance process. So things like oftentimes what typically happens in Texas, in particular, which is why we started in Texas, is your developer is going to reach out to their chosen underwriter and say, hey, we need a title commitment. Well, the work that's done by the underwriter is strictly related to surface, and they're going to tell you, oh, you need to go get a mineral title examination done. So now your underwriter is getting a surface examination. Then your developer's got to go out and get bids and reach out to different mineral groups to do this mineral title examination. Well, nothing's in sync. Your mineral title work may get done and it may take 4 to 6 weeks. Your title commitment from your underwriter may take 12 weeks, 13 weeks. You may sit in the queue for 6 weeks, right? Or vice versa. Your surface title may come out and your mineral work is, 6 weeks later because of complexities. Maybe you drug your feet. Maybe you didn't have a relationship with a broker to do that mineral work. But what we're striving to do is for Dudley Land Company clients is to provide them this option. Like, hey, we're working for you already. We are ingrained in your title process. Maybe we helped you negotiate the deal to start. So we've done a cursory title on the surface already. We understand and know that, hey, we've properly vetted this tract of land. You have a good legal description. You got a good, grantor on your lease agreement or lessor on your lease agreement. We've done that checkbox work before it even gets to the underwriting process. So now what we're offering is the ability to get, when you ask for that title commitment, we're also quoting you on the minerals. We're sharing that research that we do on the surface side or the mineral side as a part of an integrated process. So our goal and what we're shooting for and what our primary end game is when you get that title commitment back from Dudley Select Title, not only is it addressing the needs and any situation you might have with your surface ownership, but it's also going to incorporate the mineral title review into that process. So when you get it back, it's addressed minerals, it's addressing your surface need. You're going to know, how many mineral owners do I have in this project? And your exemptions and everything are going to address those things, and you'll have clear direction earlier in the process. And again, and from that, it allows us, our landman on the Dudley side is working with the examiner on the Dudley Select side because we're part of the same team. So picking up the phone, talking through challenges. Hey, what do you really need to see here? What do you need to see there? It's just a more direct line of communication, really. Think no silos. We're an integrated process, integrated team, and ultimately, we want our turnaround time to be quicker. We started last year, and really this process goes much quicker than what we see from the direct model. We're shooting for 30 to 40 days, soup to nuts, and we hear from clients that said this project's been in queue for 4 months. But with the other groups, they hadn't even started the process. And certainly there are circumstances. I'm not talking down upon the direct model by any means. It's very competent, very capable people within those teams. It's really more a matter of just volume, if anything, and the kind of the service oriented nature that we have. This is something we're offering to our existing clients. We want to be a better provider and partner to our clients. And so, their best interests are in mind for us, and no deal's too small or too big for our model.
Yeah. More efficient, way more flexible, also kind of like a concierge level service too. So
yeah, that's what we're shooting for. These are complex things, and so many of our clients, maybe it's their first time working in ERCOT, or in an oil and gas producing state, and they just don't really have the exposure to know how complex this can be and how difficult it might be working with, mineral owners in the state of Texas in the middle of the Eagle Ford, where their mineral rights are king. And, or even further, we've got 40 years of working with oil and gas developers, oil and gas companies. That's been, that is the majority of our business and will be. And we've got a lot of relationships and know-how and exposure how to navigate working with those E&P companies through that waiver process as well. And with that, we've just got a tremendous amount of background and knowledge on oil and gas development in the state of Texas. And when it comes down to really being able to articulate that to your underwriter to say, hey, I feel like we've minimized the risk, and here's all the information. Here's the resume of efforts. Here's everything we've done. You know that you're not, you know that you've uncovered every rock that's there to be uncovered. Now, whether you're insurable, that's just a matter of facts or not. But you go into it knowing that you've got a partner who understands the space and can help you navigate those things. And you're not worried or bothered by the unknown, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
you're prepared.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, how unique is this in the space? Are there other groups doing this?
Not that we know of yet. But I don't think there's any other group in Texas that has this model. I mean, I feel like we're the first, and that's what what we wanted to be. We would try to stay forward thinking. We try to think about needs, try to seek out
Yeah.
opportunities to expand our services and address a need. And so far so good. We've got a lot of really good feedback on our turnaround times and how we're able to help our clients navigate some of the challenges. With dealing with the mineral side of things and just title in general. So we'll see. Right now, I think we're the only one, and we're excited about that.
Well, cool. Glad things are moving along. If anyone wants to get started, we'll have links in the show notes to meet with Dudley to talk more about that process, about Dudley Select Title. And then if you're interested in meeting a little bit of the behind the scenes of Select Title, we've got the next part of this episode coming up with Spencer. So please listen in.
Spencer, welcome to the podcast,
What's
man.
up, guys? Excited for the opportunity today to rap about this stuff we've been, working on really for the last kind of year. I can't remember exactly when we started talking about this venture and this kind of integrated service model that we've created. I mean, it's up and running. We're a licensed title insurance company. But yeah, I don't know. It's probably golf. There might have been some beverages involved in the initial conversations.
Maybe the initial one, and then we had to have, I think we had sushi about a year and a half ago to remember if we didn't dream this and we actually talked about it, and if we were actually serious about it.
That was iced tea.
I think
but no, look, I mean,
yeah, we're a year and a half in, I want to say, from our conversations to, actual reality and execution and stuff. So big year for us. The podcast today is largely going to be about introducing, a joint venture that we have with Spencer and Brad over at Select Title and Dudley Land Company, forming this new entity that is a licensed title insurance agency. And want to kind of go in and out of why we did it, how the partnership came about, and the value proposition essentially that we think we bring to the renewable space. And so I'm excited to kind of visit about it, really get into some of the details, the big picture differences between what we're doing versus, what the other options are. And so, yeah, Spencer, thanks for coming on, and look forward to visiting about it today.
Absolutely, guys. Absolutely. Yeah.
So real quick, I want to hear, you talked about how you met, but what specifically, let's talk about what this partnership really just means to start with. And then I want to hear from you, Brent, what attracted you to Spencer and Select Title.
Yeah, for sure. I guess our introduction, Spencer and I worked together in the oil and gas space. Spencer's in his early, career was a landman, just like Dudley and what we do. He was on the in-house side and worked together, knew of each other, did projects together. We were a client, or his company was a client of ours. And so that was the connection. And, the cyclical nature of oil and gas being what it is, we went through a downturn. Spencer got into commercial title insurance, and we kept plugging along doing what we were doing. And we kept in touch and, always curious about what they were doing in their space. And then, he's curious about, hey, how are things in oil and gas? How are things in the Dudley world? And over time, as we mentioned earlier, we visited and talked and started to see opportunities. He was very interested in the opportunity to start to work in the renewable space. We were doing that as part of our diversification efforts, and opportunities were coming to Dudley Land. And so, as far as what really attracted us or made the fit work for Dudley Land with Select Title is we had a lot of early access. We were starting to see some of the pain points of the title process in the renewables game, and we felt that we had something to offer. And these guys have a tremendous amount of experience in the commercial title insurance side of the business. And beyond that, Spencer and I went through the shale revolution in oil and gas, right? Where, we were kind of very familiar with scaling projects, identifying efficiencies, kind of changing the game and evolving industry. We all went through that in oil and gas when you went from just traditional kind of conventional oil and gas development to these broad, sweeping, multi-state, projects where, you couldn't take the old way of doing things and plug it into the new circumstances. And so we went through a lot of evolution, and we thought there was a great opportunity to do that in the renewables title space. And so we tried to talk ourselves out of it, and after got half a dozen conversations, like, what, this makes sense, let's do it. And so yeah, Spencer, love to hear your 2 cents on it. But
yeah, and you mentioned I've been working with Select Title, this independent agency now for the last 3 years, a little over 3 years now. And really from day one, when I came in, I didn't know a ton about title insurance. I'd closed a couple of, houses and went in and signed all the papers and stuff like that. And I'm just like, okay, this is part of the process, I guess. But I did know and quickly understood that, they're identified, the resources that folks like Dudley deploy out into a very broad marketplace all across the U.S. are not dissimilar from the resources that we utilize in the title insurance world. Now, the big difference out there, well, and let me say this, in thinking about it in those terms, I thought, that there would be some synergies there, right? Like my network was oil and gas, commercial space. I'd done private equity. I'd worked for super majors, so I had a pretty good network across that space. And I was always looking for some way to bridge that gap, right? Like, what are the opportunities out there to draw resources from teams like Brent or commercial resources, in terms of driving new business in the door for us. And really with, the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, it was the light went on. We were thinking about it, and then I was like, wow, this is really happening. These projects are anchored. They're going to be funded, for the next 8 years or whatever. And so we got started thinking real hard about how to action that. Now, it is a big, the work is in a lot of ways the same, but the big difference is the regulatory environment that we have to operate in as an insurance provider. And we can dive into some of those particulars, but yeah, this was like, the kind of golden light out there, all of these things aligned to saying, well, actually, my network of folks, my former service providers are out there working these renewable projects. Teams like Dudley and the sophisticated brokerages that are out there are always and should always be, looking for ways to optimize their value chain and integrate that value chain, for the benefit of their customers. And that's what I'm the same. I went from upstream to midstream. I was always looking for that, golden thread that connected all of the pieces of the puzzle. And this is one of them. And the title insurance in the renewables game is a very important piece of the puzzle. And that's why I was so excited to be in position to mature this opportunity with these guys who, again, I was trying to think about it. I don't know, we've probably known each other 15, 17 years. It's a long time. It's like a long time. We've been in the same, space, navigating around each other. And for me, I certainly wouldn't get into this venture with a group that didn't have the, reputation, credibility, the ability and thought process to, really put their customer first. Our motto at Select is people first. And that's how we got into this venture, is with the people. Brent, Steve and Brad, the partners over there, like that's what made us, and keeps us super excited about what we're doing here. And that goes, to Natalie and all the way through the rest of the team, that we've been working on, building our model out with. Like, it's super great to have, a group that we can day in, day out, be confident in partnering with and focus back on delivering on behalf of our customers.
Yeah, and that's
great to
kind of
hear.
the big thing. That's the big thing. I mean, they're a service provider just like Dudley Land is, and when you have that kind of, you want to try to keep that customer focused, laser focus on how can I provide a service. And for us, on the brokerage world, we're oftentimes in on the front end, and through the acquisition work and a lot of the siding and that side of the renewable space. And we would see the issues that we would run into on the title side. And, we're always asking, how can we help? How can we improve? How can we help this process? How can we increase efficiency of our clients? And this was like the next step. It was an obvious step, but finding the right partners to do that. And we got this opportunity in Texas. So that working with Spencer and his team, they've got a tremendous amount of Texas experience. And obviously we've been down here working for many years doing what we do. So it all just kind of came together. It makes a lot of sense. And we're really excited about it.
Yeah, it's obvious that there's a lot of synergy here and just alignment and core values. We talked about that in our company meeting yesterday, Brent.
Yep.
And it doesn't just go for team members, it goes for vendors and partners as well. So really glad to see that in this partnership. So let's talk about this partnership in more specific detail and really why it matters. What's the goal of Dudley Select Title, and how is it going to make an impact, especially in the renewable space?
One of the major important factors, I think, where we can add value back to the customer base that's out there, starting, and Brent said it a little bit initially, it's like, developers are trying to figure out how to scale these operations. And we draw on our experience from the oil and gas world. When we started, running title, buying leases, that was all done by in-house landmen, right? And through the maturity of the shale revolution and the big shale plays that were out there, that wasn't the most efficient model, right? We moved to a broker-focused model. And a lot of the work that in-house landmen were doing, themselves, they pushed to the brokers, whether that be GIS, whether that be, certainly lease acquisition and field title and due diligence, curative. I mean, again, a lot of that got moved to the brokers because it was a more cost efficient model. You can turn those things on and you can turn those things off, which is more complicated if you have in-house employees working on those projects. And so, again, some of those learnings and the way that, we view this growing marketplace out there, which is maturing and actioning these projects, is we just want to be that boutique service provider that designs and actions, your project from soup to nuts, how you need it, right? Like, it's hard to change corporate models and processes, right? Like now, but for us, outside of, the bounds that we have to operate in from a regulatory perspective, we are very flexible in how you deploy, I don't necessarily even want to say advice, but, options for how you deploy capital, options for, your underwriting, ultimately on the project. That's how a title agency like Select is able to compete in the marketplace against the big underwriters direct operations. Is we're flexible. We execute on what we say we execute. We work to optimize costs where we can. Now, again, we work in a promulgated state. You pay the same for title insurance that you pay anybody else on the street, but that additional level of partnership, counsel, flexibility as you mature your product, that's what you get with a company like Select, and underwriting flexibility out there.
Can either of you share some examples of the agency model really shining? Not just like, I know the inefficiencies, but what's a real project where this has taken place?
We talked about it before, that battery storage project that we had, we
Mhm.
shopped it, customer called me. He was like, "Hey, we're thinking about this. We've got this property identified." We went in, did the research, production research on the front side. That's the other thing. I mean, we spent the time, as opposed to just calling the underwriter and saying like, "Hey, I've got a project here. What do I need?" We put that pre-underwriting package together, identified the production, looked at the leases, looked at the the historic production profiles to understand like, hey, how long, what do we think the nature of this oil and gas field is? Like, are there new permits? Are there expired permits? Or these end of life wells that have plugging orders? So we put that package together and presented that to three of our underwriters out there, and we got different answers from each of those three underwriters as to what it would take to get them comfortable with issuing that policy. That saved, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of the research and the required curative to get there, as well as the time to deploy to do that. So that is a real concrete example to me of a project, and we do that every day in the breadth of our commercial title insurance business, whether it's an apartment complex or an industrial building. There are sticking points with certain underwriters that they just will not get across. So they put those curative requirements back on the customer and say, well, you've got to, get this lien cured or find these people, across the globe to sign and, certain affidavit or whatever. While it is procedurally, not, it can impact the kind of delivery pipeline a little bit. If I get to that sticking point with the underwriter and I've got to pick that policy up, that title commitment up, and move it to another underwriter, we do that. I mean, we have to on behalf of our customers. And what we're trying to do here is, the things that we know out there are going to be sticking points: minerals, existing production, sophisticated landowners, owned in trust, all of those components that cook into our calculus or the underwriter's calculus ultimately to underwrite. We're identifying those things as early in the process as possible and seeking feedback from the shot callers at the underwriter, our contacts there, to say like, hey, how are you going to view this when we go and want a policy issued? Are there things we can do on the front side to get across it? Or do I need to, is it a better model to go with another underwriter on this project?
Spencer, what types of projects have you seen the biggest differences? In other words, the biggest difference in risk tolerance from an underwriter.
Some of it is driven. I mean, there's like I said before, there's a ton of optics, probably legitimate to some degree in the solar space, right? I mean, you're occupying so much of the surface that's out there that, the moniker of the guidance around use and the nature of the dominant mineral estate. Solar projects get a lot of optics. And in a lot of cases, I mean, the underwriters are viewing those pretty simple. Got to run the minerals back to patent, got to run the surface back to patent, seek as much, curative and waivers in those scenarios that are possible. Now, there are some options in limited cases. I think it's 40-something counties. Folks are using, not across the board, but there are some railroad commission rules aligned with neighborhood development that folks have utilized to get these projects done absent of mineral waivers. It's a hearing process that you go through. And frankly, we had one project that was, we were kind of at a sticking point with, and again, this is early stage stuff. This is prospecting stuff where we knew we were going to have some issues with getting the waivers, disparate mineral interests, and there's some big boys in there that it would have been hard to get across. And so, I call my underwriters. I say, hey, is this rule-based process through the Railroad Commission, a viable option here? Is this something, if you had a regulatory order that said this project can go in here under certain conditions and, cutouts for drill pads and stuff like that, would you guys, underwrite this? And, I got some varied feedback from that. But again, those are things that we can bring to the forefront. And, we initially found out about that. I went to a Texas Tech Energy Law Symposium as part of kind of my, building up my toolkit for this, and talked to the one attorney in Texas that is navigating people through this regulatory process. So I may not be answering your question exactly, but, again, these options that we can bring to the forefront in terms of project development that map all the way to like, hey, am I going to be able to get a title policy for this? We can't do that for our customers, but we can certainly say like, I can get you a policy on this if you go through this process. That's us. That's what we do is try to be problem solvers and partners with our customers out there and figuring out how to get the projects done.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is, to your point, the solar, the underwriting requirements of a solar project are pretty standard. You're going to have to run the minerals. You're going to have to secure waivers from that estate to a very high percentage before they'll sign off on underwriting. However, the battery storage projects, the smaller your job, the community scale solar that has a smaller footprint, you tend to see a little flexibility between underwriters. You'll see that difference in what they're going to require of you. And again, it's their risk tolerance. And I think from our side, we're seeing more on the battery storage where the selection of your underwriter is a big deal, potentially a big deal in time savings and money and what's going to be required of you to write that policy.
And I mean, they have, internally, they have underwriting requirements. If it falls under the umbrella of quote unquote energy, it has to meet certain standards out there. And that's completely their right to do that, right? Like, I mean, totally understand, why they are making those decisions. But as you said, other underwriters will view those in certain cases no differently than they would any other, commercial or industrial development that was going in there. And there is a prescriptive model for that stuff. I mean, we turn and learn that stuff all day, every day. And frankly, a lot of these issues we were addressing in the renewables projects, we don't even talk about. It's not even in our nomenclature to consider those things. Only when, it falls under the umbrella of energy stuff, do we even have to consider it. And we've run those traps out for different project types and have gotten divergent feedback on it. And some of it too, I mean, you said it, there's a monetary threshold that, we have our folks that we know, what their approval levels are, or the day-to-day folks that we talk to and the senior folks that we talk to, and then the underwriting committees that we talk to. Like, we know what project falls under which authority level at the underwriters. And again, that's our job to help navigate us through that process of who are we asking, our questions to? How are we asking those questions? What information is required and expectations from us as the title company to be consolidated before we ask those questions. Part of that's our credibility and just our, license to operate in this space. But again, that's what you're getting with, our team here at Dudley Select is that boutique service that, we're going to grind these things to a nub for you. And try to do that as early on in the process. Some of that too is our deal flow. we don't field as many deals as the big boys out there, and so we can treat each project, whether it's $2 million or $200 million, with the attention and care that it deserves for our customers. I mean, that's again what we do. We like all, so we like 200 million, we like 2 million. Like those are good projects for us.
Yeah. And really, I mean, that's what we're trying to meet, right? We don't need to, um, put a press release out about, the $300 million project we just underwrote, I mean, there's a space there for the agent, and there's an opportunity there for, groups like ours and other groups out there to really contribute, and to provide value to these groups, that are trying to put these mid-sized projects together. And ultimately that's what we're striving to do. Again, client-centric kind of approach for us. It's just a continuation of service for the existing clients that choose to work with each one of our groups. We send business to, Dudley Land Company sends business to Dudley Select, and, Select Title sends business to Dudley Land. And it's really kind of that focus on the folks that we're working with to really help them to be efficient in their closings and get their deal flow done. And ultimately that's what we're striving to be able to achieve is, make a difference for those clients and customers that we work for. And I think any service company, that's just what they strive to do. And we feel like that's what sets us apart. And this is going to be ever evolving. Texas is the first step for us all. This is our playground. This is what we're going to do. But, our goal in the future is to be able to expand this and grow this opportunity into other states, and working with Select and working with other states that they're active in. We think we can continue to grow this model and hopefully be able to provide that service, across the U.S. at some point. So,
Yeah, and one of the things you mentioned something, Bran, is like, look, we want to, we're not going to just roll out a product or a service that we aren't fully, across and comfortable with. Like I said, it's taken us a year and a half. We really only opened the doors. I think our license was confirmed in June of last year. So, we're being conservative about how we approach growth here. We want to do that organically. We want to do that with good partners going forward. Now, that doesn't mean don't call us and ask us if you've got a project wherever. But we do want to ensure that we are delivering, the best service, and we want to be able to control that. Not control from a narcissistic perspective, but just control in terms of delivering that good product back to our owners and being that partner with them throughout the full scale of the project. So that's why we're focused in Texas. A lot of deep experience here with the Select team, the escrow side of the fence. We have some of the best commercial escrow officers in the state, and a ton of credibility with our underwriters. And again, you marry that with a sophisticated and forward thinking, customer focused brokerage as Dudley, you got something pretty special there. And again, look, it's kind of an embryo at this point to some degree, but we've seen a decent amount of probably the right amount of deal traffic for us to this point. And already, we are finding ways to optimize the process, to get in front of, issues that could come down the pike as you get forward in project development. So I'm excited. I mean, fully encouraged by what we've done to this point, and excited to continue to learn and grow and further integrate.
Yeah. I think it makes total sense to have a title partner on board with you and to go the agency model. Just the efficiencies that you're going to have on your projects, but also just the peace of mind to have someone else in your corner makes total sense to me. I'm excited for this partnership for Dudley Select Title. to be integrated across the board, I think is going to be huge for a lot of the clients at Dudley, and really going to allow Select Title to shine as well. So Spencer, we really appreciate you being on. We're excited to launch this and announce it to the world. It's been great. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't be more happy to be partnered with the team at Dudley. I mean, again, we talked about values. I think we are in lockstep there. We talked about forward thinking and, really being a resource to solve some of these, challenges that are out there in the industry. I may claim one of those 20 podcasts that are coming out. There's a ton of other stuff that I'd like to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
In the weeds a little bit more.
Yeah, we're going to do quite a bit of that this year. I mean, we want to take this as an opportunity to inform, our listeners of the challenges. So this was kind of the first step to really introduce the agency model and what we're doing, the value proposition. But really, we want to be a voice to inform our client base. So definitely, Spencer, we're going to do 2 or 3 more of these. And I think every time we run into some little hairy complication, we're going to make a note of that. We'll come on here and talk about it, how we navigated X scenario. I think there's a lot of value that we can bring there to put out there to the audience. So looking forward to future conversations.
Absolutely, guys.
Awesome.
Great. Well, we'll put links in the show notes if anybody's interested in hearing more about Dudley Select Title or want to hear directly from Spencer. You can go in the show notes and click it. But gentlemen, thanks for your time, and we'll see you around.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Spencer.
Okay.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks for listening to The Land Department. Check out our website in the show notes or visit dudley-land.com to learn more about us.